Hi, I'm Charlotte Carpenter and I'm in conversation with the New Age magazine. So A Modern Rage is my debut album. It came out in October and the creative process for that started maybe like 2 years previous when I walked away from a previous working relationship and I thought, I want to make something that feels like my baby, that feels completely my own. I wanted full creative control. And I didn't realise what I was writing at the time. I think these kind of experiences that I was drawing from, they just felt like just songs, It wasn't until 1 or 2 songs were written that I thought, oh, okay, I'm singing about something much bigger than me. And I started writing about being a woman, not just in music, but also in life. And I realised that I wasn't just writing about my own experiences, I was writing about my mum and my nan and my best friends and stuff that had happened to me or around me. I was writing about it all. And it wasn't until I wrote the very last song on the album, Bigger Than You, which is about my mum, that I was just like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm saying something maybe that I didn't realise I felt. I didn't realise I was going to go into it writing a modern rage, if you get me. Like, so many people say, is it a concept album? And it's not. It just happened to me that these songs started falling into place and I could see like a generational problem or a generational trauma, as my therapist tells me. Every single part of every single song is there for a reason. So we went into the studio with so much like intention. Okay, we want strings, but where should they be? What should they sound like? And they should come in here and leave here. Like everything had a plan. There was nothing on that album which was done like accidentally. I wrote You're My Reason Why for my wife because we have these very opposing views on what we would do at the end of the world. And at the time I wrote it, we were going through the pandemic, so it definitely felt like it was the end of the world. And I have this view that I can survive the apocalypse. Like, maybe it's a bit narcissistic, but I'm like, I can defeat the zombies. I can do all this. Whereas she has the opinion of she would rather die than like face the end of the world. So I wrote You My Reason Why as a way to kind of talk her into joining me at the end of the world, which it worked because now we're married. But and then when I was thinking about a music video for that song, I wanted it really, really literally, and I thought, how can I pull off my own Black Mirror episode on a zero budget? How can I do this? And I ended up looking at loads of different directors, and I found one that was from Leicester, which I thought was really cool. And her name is Margot Rowe. She has done really cool, kind of gritty stuff based in the Midlands. And I thought, I want the video to look like it's in the Midlands, because that's where I'm from. So we started speaking about how we could pull that off on a zero budget. And everything that you can see is like something borrowed, or obviously the actresses and stuff were paid for, but we really worked so hard on this script about these 2 women that were facing the end of the world together, and one of them was maybe finding it a bit harder to cope than the other, and then we ended up really jabbing people in the heart some more, and it's just really beautiful, and every time I watch it I'm really proud of what we pulled off. I've always written on my own, so it's always been super introspective, just in your bedroom stuff, classic angsty teenager. And when I went into making the album, the guy who I produced it with, Matthew Daly, he just said, are you open to co-writing? And I was like, well, yeah, I guess. I've never tried it before. And it was an amazing experience, just take myself out of my own head and go somewhere else. I wrote Dolores with him and Not Good Enough with him. And it just felt so good to almost share the burden of finishing a song, because sometimes finishing songs can be really hard and it can take months, but when you've got someone else in the room with you, creatively bouncing off each other, I just felt like I grew so much during the process of making the album because of that experience. And I'd love to co-write with more people just to see what happens. You go into a room together and it's almost like you're in therapy together. It's really powerful.
So shout out Matt.
Shout out Matt. So I released Dolores, which is a single from the album, and it was never meant to be a single, ever. It was always going to be one of these tracks that was just sort of a hidden nugget and people would maybe find and fall in love with. But I decided that it deserved more love, because when people started talking to me about the album, they were like, really like Dolores, really like Dolores. I was like, yeah, me too. And then I had some necklaces made. Here we go, with Dolores on. Can you see it?
Yeah, we
can get it. And basically, Dolores is probably one of the most ambitious songs I've got on the record. And it's one of those songs that goes to a different place, and I'm playing quite complicated chords that I'm not used to playing, and it's actually a song that's not directly about me as well. It's the only song on the album that I'm like, this isn't my story, this is someone else's story. And Dolores is based on the television show Westworld, which is amazing, and I love it. But it says a lot about the human existence, and Dolores is this central character who, you know, is being told to live an existence that she feels doesn't belong to her, which I think we all do. So, but for some reason I really resonated with Dolores, so write a song about her. I didn't realise how vulnerable this album was until the first single came out, and I was so nervous and so scared, and I remember just having like this massive panic attack thinking, oh my God, I'm about to show like not just new people, but like people I love, you know, what I've been experiencing and going through, and not everybody knew the story. Yeah, there is no stone left unturned in this one. The thing I say now to younger artists is go and find someone to talk to about what it is that you're feeling or have experienced, because I didn't do it. I remember being in a studio situation, just being really undermined and flattened, and I'd come away thinking, I feel really weird, I don't feel good about this, you know, what is that? And I'd just shake it off and convince myself that maybe it was me that day that did something wrong or was in the wrong. But I eventually did, and I spoke to a friend of mine and said, no, this has been happening to me. And she was like, that's emotional abuse. And I was like, huh? I would say, yeah, just like speak to another person in music, you know, especially another artist, because you know what you're going through and you can digest these things together, and hopefully you don't spend years and years telling yourself that you're doing something wrong when you're not. It probably wasn't until the album was finished and I started hearing it in its full form that I could hear the woman in the album, and I suddenly felt very womanly and very like sure of myself, and that was weird because I didn't feel like that in my 20s, and there was definitely times when I was recording it where I didn't feel sure of myself. And I feel like it's a really cliche thing to talk about, being in your 30s and knowing who you are, yada yada, but it's true, you know, like you've gone through the grief of your 20s where you have loads of different partners, maybe. Well, not loads, you don't have that many. Also, you maybe lose your grandparents for the first time, and like there are like friendships that don't last, and suddenly you become aware of life not being what you think it's going to be forever. And that really like shape shifted me, I think, into being the person I am today. You have to go through the mill to realise sometimes what you really want and what you really stand for. And I didn't know that in my 20s. The first time I met my now wife, Carolina, she's a little bit younger than me, but she was so sure of herself. I was like, what have you been drinking? Because I have not been drinking the same thing. But yeah, I think there's a lot of like 30, like mid-30 aged women around me that we're all just only now just figuring it out, you know, because we're just like, oh, the things that we were feeling when we were 20, they weren't spoken of massively, especially like in the music industry. There wasn't a lot of talk about toxic relationships or abusive power, but now we have like more of an understanding about it. When I started to realise that I felt really safe working in a studio, I realised how unsafe I'd been. And when I say that, I think I mean I wasn't listened to, and like my ideas weren't heard, and then, you know, that then ended up with me losing a lot of confidence, because when your opinions and ideas aren't heard, you end up just trapping them away because you think you're wrong before you even say it, and that's a really toxic, unsafe environment. I do feel really passionate about it, and I was really scared about speaking about those sorts of experiences. It took a long time for me to realise they were even happening. But then now I started talking about it, people were like, oh, that happens to me too. And, you know, and when people watch like the documentary and stuff, like I had so many emails and messages from other women, and I was like, okay, I'm not on my own, this is good. My favourite artist who I think is worthy of being shouted about and celebrated is a lovely dear friend of mine called Eva, YVA. One of the best voices of all time. Every time she sings, I can just like feel it in my bones, and she's an incredible woman, and she's also a mother, and watching her like navigate her way through the music industry as a mother is incredible and really inspiring, and her music is perfect. 2023 has been a huge year for me. It didn't help that I decided to get married and release a debut album in the same year. There was a conversation that me and my wife had. We're like, can we do both of these things? And we were like, we're doing it. So, but it's been a huge year, like me introducing myself back into music after quite a long time off, and with music that I felt was fully mine. I've come away at the end of 2023 just feeling so proud of myself for allowing myself to be vulnerable, sharing my story, and also with a tiny bit of relief. I'm pretty relieved that all of this like built up anxiety that I had about this big year is like, oh, okay, you've done it, you've survived, and you can maybe be less anxious about it now and like look back and think, wow, you know, you've done it. You've done that one thing that you thought you would never be able to do, which is release an album and get married. So yeah. It's been a big year.
Of course, and what's coming up in 2024?
Yeah, 2024 for me is hopefully more shows, more full band shows. I want to be able to just play my music literally wherever will have me. And then slowly start writing again, I guess. You know, people are really impatient. They already want a second one. I'm like, oh my God, it's been out for 2 months. Give me a break. Everybody. My name's Charlotte Carpenter, and it would mean the world to me if you would go and find my debut album, A Modern Rage. Listen to it, share it with your friends, tell me what you think. And mostly give me a follow and let's talk about it, because I love hearing from you. But yeah, thank you so much.